Okay, thank you. That is not too long. Yeah? So I'm seeing people that they like to go from under the breast and they go straight into the side. I personally don't like it because I'm adding fullness to here under the arm. Who wants to be fatter under the arm? Right? You don't want it. You're going to be walking around like this. Right? Like floats. So that's why I like to always pretend that my arm is here. So I'm going to come down to here. You guys want to go up, you want to go sweetheart, right? If the only one that actually is allowed to is you, because you have a low neckline and a band here, so you can do 2 separate bust cups. But everybody else is going to have one single front, okay? And then we're going to have a side front. I'm going to follow this princess seam that we have here. So for this bust cup, and I'm sorry that I have actually a really thin tape. When you have a thicker tape, you have to be a little careful that when you're draping, you don't use the right side of the piece when you're draping the right side, and then when you drape the left, you use the left side of the edge of the tape, because actually you're making it that 1/4 inch smaller, right? So if you use the one on the right, when you do the other piece, you use the same line to start your draping. And I will explain that next class, okay? Because I have this saying, I know I have a lot of sayings, you know, a hair and a hair and a hair makes a whole wig. And let me explain to you what that means. If I do 1/8 of an inch less on every seam, look at how much different the size would be. 1/8 plus 1/8, 1/4. 1/4 and 1/4, half. And 1/4, 3/4. And 1/4, 1. And 1/4, 1 1/4. And 1/4, 1 1/2. And 1/4, 1 3/4. And 1/4, 2 inches. So by just changing 1/8 of an inch on each princess seam, we made it 2 inches smaller. And just keep in mind that 1 inch around per size. So we made a size 10 a size 6. Just by taking 1/8 of an inch on every seam. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we need to be precise. If we're using one side of the tape, we use the other one. Now, when we are going to do this batting for the breast, okay, I'm going to use the inside of the tape because I am not going to add seam allowance. I don't want the bulkiness on the actual seam allowance because it's not going to flip. It's going to force the lining to go up to the top. Okay? So I'm going to do it inside the tape. So I'm going to place a pin here, and then I'm going to go around the bust cup, but I don't want it to go under the arm. Okay, I want you guys to pay attention. Have you guys counted how many pins I've used?
2, 3.
Exactly. Don't fill it up with pins. So I'm going to drape 2 pattern pieces that will be part of your bustier patterns that you will submit to me. Okay? Don't think that we did the bust cup and we don't have to look at them again. There are patterns that you need to cut in order to make this garment. So I'm going to have the center front bust cup and I'm going to have the side front bust cup. Okay? So I got my fabric, I pressed it, you guys watched me, and now I'm going to make sure that it's blocked. May I borrow your elbow? Thank you. So I'm going to place it on the table and it's perfectly square. If not, I would have pulled it across the bias. You guys remember that?
Yes.
Okay. So next, the only things that are on the grain line on the dress form are, anybody can tell me?
Panels.
The center front is your grain line. Center back is your grain line. Nothing else on the body is actually on the grain line. But we need to maintain the grain line. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get a pen and I'm gonna cut off the salvage because sometimes my salvage, it will be puckering, either tighter or looser. So I'm gonna cut it off. I'm gonna make a line at 1 inch in, and then I'm gonna go and press, and that edge is going to be the edge I'm gonna use on the center front. Now, why don't I use the piece of fabric that I actually cut? Because when you cut it, the weave stretches out, it goes out of place. But with that inch in, I'm holding it in place, okay? Now, for the side front, I'm gonna get a block. I usually get a block of muslin that is about 4 fingers bigger. Oh, what happened? Making me look bad? I think this tape is very old, it's falling apart. Anyway, so I'm gonna have the grain line right here in the center of this piece. This is gonna be my grain line. So how do I know where the grain line is gonna be here? I'm gonna go and measure whatever measurement you want to have, and I'm gonna draw the grain line on the fabric first before I start draping. So I'm gonna keep this line in there so I'll know that that is the grain line. And when I get into that piece, I will use it, okay? So for now, we're gonna use only the center front. So I think a piece this big will be big enough. I'm gonna cut this. And I think I showed you this when we draped, we draped the dress, but we draped only the front and the back. We never did side front panels.
No.
We should press this, right? I'm gonna finger press it so we don't have to waste a lot of time. But you guys should go to the iron and press it. We're going to place that fold on this exact center front. You don't wanna go over it, you don't wanna see the line. You want it to be exactly on it. You want to have extra fabric on the top and the bottom because there's nothing worse than when you start draping and you have done it for already an hour and then you realize you run out of fabric, because guess what? You're gonna have to start all over again, okay? Because you can't tape or add fabric after you started draping. So the key for this to not move, your pins are always going from the outside in, okay? Because if I put a pin like this, when I pull, it comes off, right? So if I put my pin from outside in, it locks it into place. And please guys, don't put a million pins, just enough so they can hold it in place. Like for example, in this front, I'm gonna put only 3, 1 at the tip, both tips, and 1 in the center. And what is the most prominent part on this piece? Remember, we're doing it only up to the princess seam, the bust point.
Yeah.
So I'm going to caress it, right? I'm just pulling it like that until I feel where the seam is, okay? And I'm gonna put a pin exactly on the seam. You do it on the center. And then you start working your way up. Now, you can't just go through this seam like that because it's making a space like that. I don't know about you guys, but to me, my biggest pet peeve is when you're wearing strapless dresses and standing away. They look like a planter, right? I said, like, if you want to give a show, you have to pay a ticket, okay? Dresses should be close to your chest. And not because they're holding it so it doesn't fall. It is just that unless you are needing to have that maybe for work purposes or something. When we go to the neckline, I'm going to rub my finger through here and see how the fabric moves. So I want to make sure that I move it here so I don't have a wrinkle here and I have a clean line here. On the neckline, I will not put pins on it, because every time you put a pin on it, you hold the fabric in place and it's going to start creating that fullness to make the neckline stand away. Okay? In reality, our clothes are not pinned to our bodies. The only thing that at the end should be pinned only is the center front, the center back, because we're doing half of the body. Are we okay? Okay. So now I'm going to work my way down. See how I'm pulling? I feel my line. I didn't talk to you. Shut up. Can't believe I'm answering my watch. See that I have, listen, I am worried only where the seam is. Whatever happens outside of the seam, that's none of my problem. Yes?
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that this is not bubbling and this is not bubbling, and it looks pretty good to me.
Is the pin below or above the tape, or it doesn't matter?
I am, when I'm doing the bust cup, I'm going to do it inside the area.
Okay.
Okay, so to your question, it is above this tape and is below this tape. Okay?
Is it on the seam line, the princess seam?
Yes.
Exactly?
Yes.
Right in the middle?
Yeah, that it needs to be exactly on the seam.
Okay.
Okay? That's why I prefer to not have tape in there, because then you have the width of the tape. Okay? So I'm going to start copying this. I'm going to draw inside the tape up to the center front. I'm going to draw on the princess seam. I can feel where that is. And then inside the tape. I don't know if you guys want to follow this.